In this essay, I want to address the real, deeper, structural, categorical problems with Drake and not rehash the laundry list of issues, too pop, too much singing, cultural appropriation, crimes, lawsuits, ghostwriting, skill level, all that stuff. I want to break it down and make it a little bit simpler but also deeper. Because I think the real problem with Drake is that he's a goose who thinks he's a duck. In order to explain this, I'm going to have to do a professory style thing and put forth a theory, and also, of course, do a YouTuber thing and kind of do a bait and switch on you. But if you like my style, I think you're going to like this video. I am going to get to Drake. I am going to discuss him in this context, but I want to also put forth the idea of sort of a simplified view of hip-hop cultures, discussing the two authentic forms as well as two inauthentic forms of hip-hop culture. And hopefully this will lead to some distinctions which I have not seen drawn clearly, which I think might actually help people when they discuss hip-hop and what it means. So thank you for auditing the Always Positive New Music Review Show, hosted by a French professor who hopes you enjoy the pitter-patter of rain. It is Thanksgiving Day here in America. My house is completely full. There's nowhere for me to record, so I have to be out here while my hands slowly freeze. And I developed this whole idea actually just a couple days ago. I was on the Culture United live stream on Justin Hunt's channel, The Company Man, and I'm very thankful for that whole project. And it wasn't my best performance. I'm going to be honest. It was pretty late at night. I'd woken up at 6 a.m. to talk about Kendrick. I'd given a 2-hour lecture at a local college, so I was pretty tired. But right sort of in the middle, like I had this sort of like, wait, I think I figured it out. And I tried to describe this theory in 20 seconds. While sort of derailing the conversation. So I apologize to all my colleagues over there, and I want to really get into it here, like kind of flesh it out. Sorry, I put my coffee too far away. So let's talk about this, and I'm going to keep it cute. I'm going to keep going with this kind of cute animal imagery because you'll see, okay? So I want to talk about the primary form of hip-hop, okay? By primary, I mean most important, but also first. That's what I call the duck form. I chose duck randomly, okay? There's no secret sort of animal thing to be read in. Well, okay, it is Thanksgiving, and we do eat duck in Thanksgiving in our house, so I do like duck very much. But anyways, the primary form. This is the primary form that is an artistic expression for and by Black Americans, okay? Art by Black Americans. That's what it is. Describing their humanity in a variety of ways. Their emotional, physical, social, societal, cultural, sexual, psychological state, all of it. All the breadth of humanity expressed. Okay? And now, I say this all the time. That's why I always have this very close to say I'm not in a position to properly contextualize because, I am obviously not of that culture. I don't know it, I observe it, and I'm a tourist. This is in some ways an unofficial sequel to my video about being a tourist in hip-hop. But the problem is this, and it's a problem and not a problem at the same time. This duck culture, this primary form of hip-hop culture is shorthanded to the culture. And it ends up being sort of a broader term which can sometimes just refer to Black American culture. Sometimes the terms are used almost interchangeably. And what that means is cultures shift. All cultures shift. Black American culture shifts. White American culture shifts, all culture shifts over time. So that when people talk about the culture, they're actually talking about a whole series of very complicated, shifting societal forces. It was one thing and it was something else. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that whenever people talk about the culture, it's a moving thing. Wow, maybe I should have chosen crows as one of my little birds here, because I got lots of sound out here. And what makes it so important, and why I think hip-hop is so special, is that it was never stolen. Unlike virtually every other art made by Black Americans, hip-hop was not stolen. It has been protected from the inauthentic forms that are threatening it. Somehow it manages to stay the culture. But it needs to be protected. But this is the thing. this is what it is. This is the primary form, but it is not the only form of hip-hop. And that's maybe my most, I don't know, controversial thing to say, okay? Because it was never stolen, but it was gifted. It was gifted to the world. And this was gifted by, people hearing it and taking it on. It was also intentionally spread by the Zulu Nation in the early 1980s. Africa Bambaataa took a tour of the world called the New York City Rap Tour, where he took Phase 2 as a graffiti artist, and DST as a DJ, and himself and the Rocksteady crew, and he showed all the elements of hip-hop. Breaking, graffiti, MCing, DJing, and he showed it all around the world, and people actually learned it. This was his gift to the world. I think we're just going to have to rock with those crows. They're just going to be here the whole time. So this gift to the world morphed into the secondary form of hip-hop. Not the primary, not the most important, but the secondary form. I call it VOV. That stands for the voice of the voiceless. And that's what makes it so interesting. It is a tool, a very easily adapted tool, both in terms of the amount of money it takes to start doing and just the amount of basic talent you need to start doing it. A very low bar of entry, which means that the voiceless all over the world can use this tool in a similar way to the way that it is used in Black American culture. So this is when you get to the amazing instances of immigrant culture in other countries. For the people who are marginalized anywhere, can be their voice. Sometimes it's not even a question of ethnicity or of race or of immigration. Sometimes it's just the politically marginalized. They can use this tool, all right? Some prominent examples, any UK hip-hop, perfect example. Well, most UK hip-hop, perfect example. French hip-hop, there's a reason that France is the #2 country in the world for hip-hop and for rap music. It's because the voiceless really needed hip-hop culture at the moment that they got it. So, I'll give an example. One of the best or most famous groups in the history of French rap is called NTM, Supreme NTM, which means Supreme, fuck your mother. Very good band. And one of the rappers is a guy named Kool Shen. And you look at him, and he's just a white guy. So you think, I say, hey, if I told you that, one of the realest hip-hop dudes in the history of the world is a white French guy, you might be like, there's no way. But, his parents were Portuguese. He was an immigrant. He grew up in a housing project in the northern suburbs of Paris. He was a gifted graffiti artist, a gifted breaker, a gifted DJ, and a gifted MC. Because that's the other thing, Because the culture shifts, when it exports, sometimes it acts differently outside. So, an American will probably never win the breaking competitions in the Olympics. Probably never will. Because for the most part, American hip-hop culture has let that art form, they've ceded their place to other countries that respect that art form more, for the most part, right? As a good example is France. So, what? So Kool Shen isn't hip-hop, even though he absolutely, just like Joey Starr, the other member of his band of Martinican origin, they use this tool that was given to them, and they use it with excellence and skill and in the exact or in virtually the same way as it was intended. I think we could even say that Americans can be goose rappers, okay? I think that's what, non-Black Americans, if they show enough craft, right? If they work hard enough at their craft and they respect the fact that no matter how good of a goose they are, they will never be a duck, okay? As long as they never try to say, I'm a duck, they are encouraged and fostered and even can be in community with ducks. Alchemist, Eminem, Mac Miller, right? There's tons of them. So what's the problem with Drake? The problem with Drake is that he's a goose, man. He's a Canada goose. But he's more than a goose. He is the goat. He's the greatest the greatest goose of all time. All right? Of all non-Black Americans, has anybody had a bigger influence, more artistic success than Drake? Absolutely not. And it's real. I understand there's a lot of ways to discount Drake, but I think he's real. I think his expression of hip-hop is a real expression of hip-hop. I don't think it is, at least in origin, exploitative. I think he did have an alienating upbringing. I do think he struggled with a lot of the same issues that other rappers struggle with. I do think that being half Jewish and half black is something that deserves to be expressed and understood. Okay, I do think he used the tools of hip-hop to do what hip-hop should do. He used the tool. But the problem was proximity. Canada's super close to America. And let's face it, some of our culture overlaps, okay? And I'm not being like an American chauvinist here, all right? Most great American comedy these days is Canadian, you know? So, or a lot of, anyways, what I'm saying, right? It's the proximity, okay? The proximity. Here's Drake, and he's in the pond, and he's playing, and he's making songs with more and more ducks, more and more members of the primary culture, writing songs with them, in brotherhood with them, collab albums. The public can't tell the difference because the public is racist and they don't care. Either they actively want him to replace black Americans, or they just don't care. And so the public treated him like a duck. And he's swimming around in the pond, and he's there, and everyone just says, oh my God, this goose is the most successful duck of all time. All right? It's a category issue. Drake is a category issue. It should be good enough that he is the greatest goose there has ever been, the greatest example of somebody outside of black American culture using this tool gifted to the world by black American culture. And that is why Kendrick had to pop off. He had to say, he is not like them. No, a goose is not the most successful duck of all time. Because the one and the most important rule, and this is the rule that I talked about in my tourism guide to being a non-black participant in hip-hop culture, is if you are in that space, you better know it. You better say it. I mean, I'm not even a goose. I'm a freaking mayfly. I don't know what I'm a crow flying by, whatever it is, right? Like, I don't even make hip-hop. I just observe it, right? But it's like, you better acknowledge that this is not my pond. This is not my space. I am just here. And that's the problem. Okay? Does that make sense? Do you see that that's actually, I'm trying to be compassionate here to Drake. Because he's not the only one who mistakes him as, like he is treated. And he was even treated by many people in Black America as one of them. He was treated that way and presented that way, right? And it also makes sense that this is a problem that is not, it may not be that well understood by participants or by the makers of primary hip-hop culture, by Black America, right? They are so used to seeing their culture stolen and being counterfeited. And also, why should they be paying attention to hip-hop in other cultures? I mean, they can, like me, just study it because it's interesting, but it's not like, okay, one of my favorite examples is Russell Simmons, the co-founder of Def Jam. He went to France, and he was in the back of a limousine, and he was talking to somebody, and he said, they got black people in France? It's hilarious, right? Because it's like France was and is the second biggest producer and consumer of hip-hop music in the world and hip-hop culture. And somehow, he had no idea. And he didn't know because it didn't matter to him. And so that's where this terminology problem comes in, right? That's where it gets tricky because we have the idea of the culture. It's an overly vague term. There's simultaneously only one and multiple at the same time. There's only one the culture, and that's the culture to which I am a complete tourist and just observe and I try to be in community with, but never will be a part of, right? But like, French hip-hop culture exists, and it is very real, and it is very meaningful, and sometimes it is just as creative or more creative as American hip-hop culture. It really may be. But you know what I'm going to say. It's always going to be a goose. Now, that's the good side, okay? There's also the inauthentic, and that's where things get more complicated. is there are inauthentic forms of hip-hop which can sometimes be confused with the authentic, okay? The graphics department did not do as good of a job on these two. We got your grass snakes and your cottonmouth snakes, okay? Your grass snakes, that's your non-venomous, inauthentic hip-hop, okay? It's not going to hurt you. It might scare you, but it's not going to hurt you, okay? This is when hip-hop or rap is used as a stylistic flourish. It's not like robbed or stolen or desecrated, but it's just kind of superficial. You know, like if you ever listen to like an 80s rock band and all in the middle of it there's like some clumsy ass like rap verse, okay? Or a pop band, all right? Like it's not inherently like evil, but it is inauthentic. All right? And sometimes it can be good, right? I mean, I had this debate with one of my students once, and why is it that 21 Pilots is not hip-hop? And it's not even that it's because they're white kids from Ohio, because white kids from Ohio could easily make hip-hop. You know, they can make goose hip-hop, not duck hip-hop, but they can make hip-hop, right? And I realize it's because the way that they use the art form is not the same way. They're not using it as the voice of the voiceless. They're using it as an artistic tool. But it's not even exclusively limited to race. I mean, I love Prince. But when Prince would use hip-hop, or Michael Jackson, when they would use hip-hop, they were very awkward. Very like, is this the thing that I do? Like it's inauthentic, but not hurtful. It is a grass snake or a water snake. There's international examples as well. You know, I think K-pop is a good example of this. You know, there's a lot of like K-pop rap, and it's not like evil or bad. I don't think it's trying to hurt, but it's just using it as a style. But then you get to the dangerous side of inauthentic rap. That's where you get to the cottonmouth snake. You might think it's the same thing as this, but that's because you didn't look close enough and see the angry eyebrows, which makes it venomous or poisonous. I don't know the difference. If you know the difference and you want to tell me, go fuck yourself. So anyways, it's a poisonous snake. Just kidding. I love you, science people. I'm married to a science people. You know, the cottonmouth snake is the most dangerous thing. And that is where the powerful use the tool of the powerless to their own benefit. Okay? The powerful imitating the weak. And I don't mean like physically weak or spiritually weak. I mean like societally weak. Okay? It's a counterfeit. This is the commercial exploitation. This is when people who systemically benefit from inequality use the tool that is used to fight inequality in the name of inequality. Okay? Think of any like right-wing rapper, any Trumpy rapper, with the exception of Kodak Black. You know, any of those kind of like Tom McDonald style people, or like Logan Paul or Jake Paul, whichever one of the Paul brothers did rap. Any of those YouTubers who like just do who just use their synthetic white wealth and then like say like I'm a rapper and they just start rapping, or like any corporation, like from Fruity Pebbles to you know, like how many times have Fruity Pebbles to McDonald's, you know, using hip hop, using rap, using this culture as a way to imitate the ducks. Okay, a snake imitating a duck, it's an ugly thing. Okay, you can't fly, but hey, sometimes ducks can be snakes. All right, so it's true. You can be of the culture and use it to hurt people. You know, I mean, listen, I love Snoop Dogg, but how many commercials can he possibly do? How much can he sort of debase himself? I love Ice Cube. Coors Light commercials? And that brings us all the way back to Drake. You know, that brings us all the way back to Drake. Because if you are unkind, it's not just that he's a goose who thinks he's a duck. It could be that he's a goose who's trying to be a cottonmouth snake, who's trying to gain all this power and exploit this art form for his own benefit, to gain power and to misuse this culture that was given to him. So those are my thoughts. Those are my questions. Is it too goofy with all the stupid animals? Now the crows have stopped, but I can't re-record because I got to get cooking, or I got to help. I'm a sous chef. I'm not. Let's be honest here. Okay, I'm the guy who, like, the day before I cut up the garlic and I peeled the potatoes. All right. So anyways, if you celebrate Thanksgiving, have a nice one, and if not, have a weird Thursday where Americans aren't doing stuff. All right, until next time. What do you think of the theory, by the way? Does it hold up? Is the camera?